A'udhu billah minash shaitanir rajim. We seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Salãmun Alaykum. Peace be upon you. God willing, today we want to have another session for the studying of the appendices of Quran, the Final Testament, translated by Dr. Rashad Khalifa, the Messenger of the Covenant. And God willing, today we want to start where we left off last session. We were talking about number one here, one God, Shahada, and we talked about table 22 in details. And God willing, today we want to start with table 23. So let's get started. And here we have also by adding the numbers of the 19 surahs where La ilaha illahu occurs, plus the verse numbers where this crucial expression is found, plus the total number of occurrences, which is 29. The grand total comes to 2,128, or 19 times 112, and the details are shown in table 23. So what is this? I mean, first of all, let's talk about this table and get to know this table better. So previously, if you remember, we were talking about the first part in the Quran, the first verse in the Quran where La ilaha illahu, the expression La ilaha illahu, there is no God except He, has occurred, and also the last verse in the Quran where this expression has occurred. And now in this table, we are talking about the 19 surahs where in which this expression has occurred. And if you look at this, you would see that, okay, so we have four columns basically. And we have, so this one is just number, it says 1 to 19 basically. The second column is the surah number, the place, the chapter where this expression has occurred. And then we have verses with basically this La ilaha illahu expression. And these are the verses. For example, in chapter 2, we have two verses. We have 163 and 255. Chapter 3, we have three places. And in 18, it has occurred basically two times. For example, here, if you look at this verse, it says شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو, one time here, والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. So again, we have the same expression here. So two times it has occurred in verse 18 of Surah 3, basically. Now, we have other places in the Quran as well, other surah numbers and also verse numbers where we see this expression. And then the last column of this table talks about frequency of Shahada, meaning that how many times it has been repeated in that surah. For example, we know that, okay, surah number 2, there are two verses where this is repeated. So the frequency of Shahada is 2. And then in surah 3, there are 3 verses where it has occurred. But then verse 18 of surah 3 is where, as I just showed you, is where this has occurred twice. So basically, the frequency of Shahada is 4 times. And then also it goes for this. It goes the same for the rest of the surahs and chapters, basically chapters and verses as well, and the frequency of occurrence of this expression. Now, if you add up the number of the chapters or surahs where this expression has occurred, we end up with 507. And if we add up the verses where this expression has occurred, we end up with 1,592. And then if you look at the frequency of occurrence, we end up with 29. So 507 plus 1,592 plus 29 equals 2,128, which is 19 times 112. So this sign should have been an equal sign. This is just like a misprint. It is only supposed to be just like a equal sign, no big deal. Anyhow, now let's take a look at this table in the Excel sheet that I have created. If you go here, the link for this Excel sheet, I'm going to leave it in the more section of the video, God willing, and you can take a look at it. So basically, We have the same thing repeated here. If you look here, I have just added up those verses which are separate here. For example, if you look here, you would see that it's 163 and then 255. Here, I've just added them up so that I would have like a final count at the bottom of this column here. So that's why the numbers here are different. For example, this one, if you click on it, you see 2, 6, and 18, and then we have 2, 6, and 18, and then obviously 2, 6, and 18 adds up to be 26, and so on and so forth here up to the end of it. So we have the sum here 507, the sum here 1592, and the sum here 29, and we end up with 2128, which is a multiple of 19. Subhanallah. So this is absolutely fantastic. We see the same structure of multiple of 19 and the same pattern being repeated over and over and over and over again. So this is also two situations that we had in the previous session, as I explained, chapter in table 22 and also table 23, talking about La ilaha illahu and the features and the mathematical characteristics which are related to this crucial expression in the Quran. Subhanallah. Now let's move on. So here we have the second pillar of submission, Islam, and it is the contact prayers, Salat. Here we have the word Salat occurs in the Quran 67 times. And when we add the numbers of surahs and verses of these 67 occurrences, the total comes to 4,674, or 19 times 246. See index of the Quran. Now, we don't have the basically the table or the chapter and verse numbers where these have occurred. The word Salat has occurred. But thank God I was able to find it online, and I created my own table. The table was already created in another website. I just borrowed it from that website for the numbers of basically surahs and verses of 67 occurrences of the word Salat. So in Arabic, we write it in this way. It's Sad, Lam, Waw, and then He. So if you're familiar with Arabic, you would be able to read this. And so Salat means contact prayer, basically. And then these are the surah numbers and verse numbers where this crucial, basically, pillar of submission has occurred. So we have here on the left-hand column, we have the surah number, and on the right-hand column, we have the verse number. So, for example, if you look at Surah 2 and verse 3, as an example, you would see this here. It says, Allazina yu'minuna bil ghayb wa yuqimuna salat. So here we have the word salat. And if you look at the translation, it says, who believe in the unseen, observe the contact prayer salat. So this is how you should be looking for that. And God willing, you can take a look at our website, taslim.org, taslim.org, and then you can search each and every one of those verses to be able to make sure that those counts are correct, and the places that we have, given you the address for are the right ones. And you could do it just like in a random search, or you could check all of them together. There's no problem. You are more than welcome to do so. And this is absolutely fantastic. So the thing is that when we had the same verse in the same surah, basically, or different verses in the same surah, we're going to only bring it once. We're going to only count it once. We're not going to count it several times. So we have the surah number, and that's surah number 2. These verses 343, 45, 83, 110, 153, 177, 238, 277. For example, let's take a look at 277. 277 here. Inna allazina amanu wa amilu salihat wa aqamu salat, right? So again, we have the word salat here being repeated, and so on and so forth up to the end of the Quran, wherever we have the word salat. So chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 27, 29, 30, 31, 33, 35, 42, 58, 62, 73, and 98. So the sum total of the chapter numbers, and if you pay attention, We have on, if like we had several verses in the same chapter, we're going to count the chapter only once. We're not going to count it twice because it is only one chapter, right? So we're going to count the chapter only once. So the sum total of the chapters is going to be 730, and the verse numbers, sum total of it is going to be 3,944. And again, I need to repeat that if one verse had several of the word salat in it, if like 2 times the word salat is repeated in it, we're going to count the verse once. And then the total is 4,674, and that is a multiple of 19. 19 times 246. Subhanallah. Just think about it. How is it possible that anyone could have had control over where and which chapter number the word salat, which is the second pillar of submission, Islam, could have had any control over where it could have happened, so that after 1400 years, we end up with something which is abiding by the same pattern of 19 in the Quran. This is absolutely amazing, absolutely fantastic. Subhanallah. Now, let's move on. Fasting, it's the third pillar of submission. Fasting, or in Arabic, siyam. The commandment to fast is mentioned in these verses. These are the verses where the fast has occurred. Basically, the commandment to fast has occurred. The total of these numbers is 1,387, or 19 times 73. It is noteworthy that 3335 mentions fasting twice, one for the believing men and the other for the believing women. This is absolutely fantastic. If you look at this verse and chapter number, you will see that basically this is a long verse that is talking about men and women, and are talking about basically the features of believers, basically believing men and women. Obviously, the subtitle of the verse is equality of men and women. And this is really interesting. When you get to the basically almost end of it, you would see that the fasting men and the fasting women. And if you look at the Arabic, you would see 2 words in Arabic that are basically, grammatically speaking and morphologically speaking, they are derivations of the word siyam. So here we have like the men and the women who are fasting, basically. So in Arabic, it's only one word for the men and one word for the women. And in English, you have to have 2 words because it's an adjective for men, and also fasting would be an adjective for women. This is absolutely fantastic about the grammar of basically Arabic and the morphology of Arabic. If you're more interested in it, you can just search online about the measures of the Arabic words, and then you would be able to understand what this actually means. Now, if we take a look at those verses, basically, you would see that these are the verses, I mean, which have been mentioned also in the appendix. These are the verses where we have the commandment to fast, basically, in the Quran. So again, we have the surah number or the chapter number, and then we have the verse number. And again, if it has occurred more than one time in the same chapter, we're going to count the chapter once. And then if you these are all the places where the commandment for the basically fasting has been mentioned. And then if you look at the sum total of the chapter numbers, is going to be 102, and the sum total of the verse numbers is going to be 1,285, and then the final number is going to be 1,387, which is a multiple of 19. 19 times 73, and that's exactly what we have here, 1,387, or 19 times 73. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. This is absolutely fantastic. Again, the third pillar of submission has been mentioned in the Quran in these verses, and it happens to abide by the same pattern of multiple of 19 in the Quran after 1400 years of the revelation of Quran to Prophet Muhammad. This is not a coincidence. Subhanallah. This is absolutely beyond mankind to create such a book. Subhanallah. Now, let's go to number 4 and number 5, the fourth and the fifth pillar of submission. This is going to blow your mind, just Let's read it together, and then, God willing, I will explain it. Now, number 4 is the obligatory charity zakat, and number 5 is Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca. While the first 3 pillars of Islam are obligatory upon all Muslim men and women, the zakat and Hajj are decreed only for those who can afford them. This explains the interesting mathematical phenomenon associated with zakat and Hajj. Absolutely fantastic. It's gonna blow your mind. Just bear with me. The zakat charity is mentioned in these verses, okay, in the Quran. These numbers add up to 2,395. This total does not quite make it as a multiple of 19. It is up by 1. So let's take a look at it. Now, these are all the verses where the word zakat occurs in the Quran, all the chapter numbers and the verse numbers. And if you add them up, you end up with 2,395, the same exact number that we have here. And this number is not a multiple of 19. Basically, it is up by 1. So 2,391 is up by 1. So basically, if we deduct 1, number 1, from 2,395, we're going to end up with 2,394, and then this would be a multiple of 19. But this is half the story. Let's continue reading. The Hajj pilgrimage occurs in these verses. The word Hajj basically occurs in these verses. These numbers add up to 645, and this total does not quite make it as a multiple of 19. It is down by 1. Subhanallah. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so this is basically all the surah numbers and verse numbers where the word Hajj occurs in the Quran. And if you add them up, you're going to end up with 645, and it is not a multiple of 19, and it is only down by 1. So basically 645 plus 1, if we add number 1 to 645, we're going to end up with 646, and 646 is a multiple of 19. Subhanallah. Now here it says that thus zakat and Hajj together give a total of 2,395 plus 645, which ends up to be 3,040, and that is 19 times 160. This is absolutely fantastic. So this is, just take a look at it. These two numbers basically that don't become a multiple of 19. And if you look here, if you combine zakat and Hajj, basically I have combined these two numbers, 2,395 plus 645. So if we combine the two, we end up with a number which is a multiple of 19, and that is 3,040, and it is 19 times 160. So this is just absolutely fantastic, and this is how God, attracts our attention to the fact that obligatory charity zakat and the Hajj pilgrimage are decreed only for those who can afford them, and this is mentioned in the Quran. Although zakat charity is only the least amount is 2.5% of your net income, and God willing, if you start paying it after some time, you would feel that provisions will be flowing into your life, and you would be able to pay it off, and there is no problem with paying zakat, and even God willing, you would be able to increase the amount of zakat. And Hajj is decreed for those who can afford it, basically financial wise and time wise. And then, God willing, may God help us all to be able to attend the Hajj pilgrimage. It is basically only once in our lifetime required. And subhanallah, this is absolutely amazing. So the three basic pillars of submission. Number one, shahada, la ilaha illallah, basically, and then contact prayer, salat, and fasting, siyam. Individually, there are multiple of 19. Obligatory charity, zakat, and Hajj pilgrimage are decreed only for those who can afford them, and that's basically it's mentioned in this way, that the total of obligatory charity zakat, verse numbers and surah numbers, is up by 1, and the Hajj pilgrimage verses and surah numbers is down by one, but together they make it a multiple of 19, and that is 19 times 160. This is absolutely fantastic. Subhanallah, subhanallah. I mean, as we move forward, we see so many of these multiples of 19 that it is just a point of, solid proof that we are dealing with a super beyond humanity mathematical structure and beyond humanity mathematical book. And we know that this is the proven word of God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Alhamdulillah, we have this chance to read this book and talk about this mathematical miracle in this age of computers and technology. So, up to this point is enough for this session. So, until the next session and the next file, may God be with you. Peace be upon you. Salāmun Alaykum.